To Professor Ziad Majid, Assistant Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the American University of Paris, works on Lebanon and Syria. The role of the international community. We've played the clips of the Turkish ambassador. Hillary Clinton has called on the UN Security Council to take action. But what does this actually mean, and how significant is it? How does the Assad regime respond to international outcry?
First, from the Assad regime side, I think the regime counts on two factors. One, what is called now more and more the Libyan trap, which is the endless conflict in Libya and the fact that Gaddafi is resisting till now and there is no regime change, which means that the international community's priorities are still in Libya and cannot afford to have a second dossier or a second file to deal with. So they are counting on that. They are counting also on Russia and China, who are supporting the Syrian regime and always threatening of using the veto against any strong condemnation or against bringing the Syrian case to the International Court of Justice. And they are also unfortunately counting on South Africa, India, Brazil, that are extremely hesitant, and we don't understand why countries that lived through a very painful past and are now examples of emancipation, of democracy, of freedom, are supportive or at least are silent when it comes to such a despotic and brutal regime like the one in Syria. So this is from the Syrian side. From the international community side, I think no one is talking about military intervention, and in fact the Syrian people doesn't want a military intervention. They want sanctions, they want clear messages, they want to cut sometimes diplomatic relations to send a very strong signal, and they want international justice. There are courts, there is international law, there are conventions, and there are definitely evidences now and cases of crimes against humanity that should be dealt with properly. So far, everything has been very slow, extremely slow. There are geostrategic interests and calculations sometimes related to the borders with Israel, related to the borders with Iraq and with Lebanon, that are keeping the international community from getting more into Syria by saying that we don't want a new destabilization. However, this is an illusion. The destabilization is with these kind of regimes that use always regional cards and the sufferings of people in order to maintain their regime and to remain in place. I think the international community should respond much more clearly and strongly. International human rights organizations should also be active. Public opinions in the West, in the countries where democracy is respected, should act more in order to push their governments to make positions. And let me add something also on the Arab League, not only to blame the international community. The Arab League is silent, and this is again a shame. For the new governments who just emerged after great revolutions, whether in Tunisia or in Egypt, there are no enough reactions, or with old governments, other despotic governments in place in the Gulf, in many other places, who are again silent about what's happening. The Secretary General of the Arab League did a very shy and timid discourse yesterday. I think this kind of complicity is encouraging the Syrian regime. However, and once again, the public opinion in the Arab world is more and more now mobilized and sympathetic with what's happening in Syria, and we all count on the courage of the Syrian regime. But I think, again, it's really a shame to leave the Syrian people alone fighting, of course, peacefully.
Ziad Majid, we have just gotten someone on the phone within Syria, and it's very difficult to do this. So we want to go right to Razan Zaitouneh, who is the lawyer, human rights activist in Damascus, who's been reporting on the recent protests for various online networks. Welcome, Razan, right now. What is happening where you are?
As you know, yesterday there was 24 people that killed in different areas around Syria, from Homs to Hama to Latakia and some suburbs of Damascus. There is people who got killed in Arbin, in the suburb of Damascus. 5 people got killed, one in Al-Mu'addamiyya, one in Al-Kiswa, and 14-year-old child in Zabadani, also suburb of Damascus. So today there will be a funerals of those people. One funeral has started in Arabin. There was more than 40,000 people who participated in this funeral, which turned to a protest, a huge protest, chanting against the regime and for freedom. And we got the news now that the security and the army shoot against the protesters and used tear gases and arrested many people in attempt to end this protest.
What do you think needs to happen, Razan? And thank you very much for joining us. First, why you're willing to risk your safety simply by speaking on the phone, since I know a number of people have been tracked in that way.
We have a message. We want the whole world to know what's going on. It's really, I cannot believe it, that after all this time, after about more than 4 months, international society still deal with not seriously with the situation in Syria, in spite of what we all sacrifice to make the information reach, to make the world know what is going on the land. About 22,000 civilians got killed during last 4 months. Until now, no real reaction from the international society. But we insist, we will go on to make the world know what's going on, to put pressure on the world to do their duty to the Syrian people.
There are no foreign journalists allowed inside. The Syrian government claims they're attacking armed forces with guns. What is actually taking place on the ground, Razan?
About the first point, yes, there is no journalist on the ground. The Syrian citizen, he is doing the whole thing. He is the one who protests on the land. He is the one who works the journalist rule, who take photos, who shoot videos, who sends this information to the media. He's doing everything by himself. About the criminals or armed groups on the land, we all know the truth. We all know that the only terrorist group in the country is this regime, who has been killing its own people for more than 4 months, who has been arresting dozens of thousands of people only because they want their freedom.
We're going to break for 30 seconds, then come back. Razan Zaitouneh, lawyer, human rights activist, speaking to us from Syria. Many have turned off their cell phones, not wanting to be tracked. We also want to thank our guest, Ziad Majid, who joined us from assistant professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the American University of Paris, who works on Lebanon and Syria. Back in 30 seconds.